Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Meniere's Muse podcast. My name is Heather Davies, and I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease and vestibular migraine in 2017 and found myself craving connection with warriors and found the more warriors I met, the more inspired I was, and that my hope for healing came to life. I created this podcast to share stories of vestibular warriors, regardless of their diagnosis or where they are in their journey, to give hope so no one feels alone. If you know someone with an inspiring story, please find my contact information below. We all have a story. Let yours inspire others. Many warriors out there have been told by doctors there is nothing more we can do for you, or a variation of other comments like that. Today's guest took these words as the catalyst to become a student of self and began a journey of self-discovery. The inspiration to start Head Health comes from 27 years experience, 16 years as a chronic daily migraine patient, and currently 11 years free from both vestibular and chronic migraine. Since his last migraine on May 13, 2011, Anthony spent 10,000 plus hours developing the core logic for Head Health, including analysis of 2,000 peer-reviewed literature and journal articles, market data of over 5,000 migraine sufferers, thousands of one-to-one and group coaching sessions, and the creation of 6 migraine lifestyle health programs. Anthony is also a certified health coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and a founding member of the John Maxwell Team. This is part 1 in a 2-part series where Anthony shares his migraine journey and how he came to be migraine-free for the past 11 years. And in his words, personally, I know what it's like to suffer and what is required to become healthy and stay healthy. I never want another human being to experience this pain. That is why I have dedicated my life to helping migraine patients to restore their health and never live in fear of the next attack. Please welcome Anthony. I don't know if you know this, Anthony, but I've always thought of you as a mentor of sorts since that. And I was
thank you.
so hesitant to take that program, but so thankful and blessed that that I did that. You came across my path. It was just life-changing, to be completely honest. But I want to hear today about your story and everything going on with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your vestibular journey and everything you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So my migraine journey really started when I was 11 years old. And then I had one every single day until I was 27. So by definition, I was a 16-year chronic daily migraine sufferer. And what ended up happening was on most people's journeys, right, where you start to get a little symptoms and then things start to progress. And then they pretty much just become chronic in all sorts of ways, shapes, and forms. So I started off with allergies, sinuses, migraines. Within the migraines, I started to then have the traditional vestibular migraine symptoms, right? Especially the very, very heavy bouts of dizziness, vertigo, a lot of inner ear pain, a lot of inner ear just imbalances. And that was around like 2002, 2003, 2004. So I was never able to get a formal diagnosis. It was always like, okay, you got migraines, you got this dizziness. I think then you also have these allergies, you have the sinus issues, you then had meningitis, you then have what could be potentially autoimmune disorders. So I was like that bubble boy. I was the anomaly in most of the Western medical system. My big turning point happened in October of 2010 when I was a candidate for one of the first in Illinois for Botox. This is when it was just about to be FDA approved. And they told me, right, I can get 36 injections into my head. And it was so experimental where I was honestly kind of frightened to do it and take it. So I took a leap of faith. I decided to go to the Mayo Clinic. My birthday's in January. So January 2011, I went to Mayo, met with brilliant doctors, neurologists, physical therapists, biofeedback specialists. And at the end of the week, Heather, they were like, Anthony, thank you so much for coming out. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do for you. You've tried everything that the medical system has to offer. We can suggest maybe some more medications, but as you've seen, you're not really responsive. You've had adverse reactions. So like, we're not really sure what to do. So we can give you a couple prescriptions. We can give you some supplements, but kind of here you go. You're on your way now. So needless to say, that really broke me. And this was in 2011. So there was no like Facebook groups, right? There was no like social presence. I mean, we had old school message boards, and that was like really the extent of the whole thing. So I then started to turn myself into a student of self. I started to understand, right, what my symptoms were, my triggers, understand how my lifestyle was influencing me. And lo and behold, 118 days later, May 13, 2011, I had my last migraine and haven't had one since. And that actually goes with all the vestibular symptoms as well. I have not had any dizziness. I have not had any of the vertigo symptoms. I've not had any of that inner ear pain that I always used to get with the migraine. So yeah, that's what
Wow.
started on a path, which then led us to all these experiments that I had to do, which then led to the creation of the protocol, which then led to you and I.
Now let me backtrack a minute to the Botox. Did you actually have the injections at Mayo?
No,
You did.
no, oh
Okay.
no,
All
no.
right.
I was terrified, but my neurologist at the time did not even really have any confidence in it. I mean, because she was like, well, this might work, this might not work. Like, we've kind of seen some things, but we really don't know. I was like, I'm not about to inject something in my head when we don't know. So yeah, that's where I was like, I'm gonna pump the brakes on that one.
So what made you jump into this self-discovery, or what was that pivotal moment for you?
Pivotal moment was when I went to the Mayo Clinic with about a 2-inch binder of like my discovery journey. And then the neurologist was like, man, you know more about this than I think I do. So, I mean, what do you think you want to do? And then something just kind of clicked right there. Then once they said, like, there's nothing that we can really do because you've tried everything, it was like, well, if you're telling me that I've discovered some stuff, then now also you're telling me that there's really not much that you can do. Well, then I guess I have to. That's what started it.
Crazy. So you taking personal responsibility for your symptoms is
Mhm.
really, it's so crazy because I just had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I wish that at the beginning of my journey that I wish someone would have handed me a script pad that said, change your nutrition.
Mhm.
How's your mental health?
Mhm.
All those, how's your spiritual health? Everything. And I would have been, I'm a list taker, so I would have been, check, check, yes, I'll check all that off and do it. And instead, it just prolonged the process because everyone was just throwing medication at you,
Mhm.
or it's crazy. So this fast forwards you to develop a program to
Mhm.
benefit other people, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, this is kind of one of those things where, you brought up the spiritual side of it. You brought up, right, the mental health side of it. And, for me, like literally 16 years every single day, right, that took a major toll on my, not only my mental health, but really my spiritual health, right? And I'm a very spiritual person. So when I got back from the Mayo Clinic, I mean, I got down on my hands and my knees and I prayed, right? And I was like, if something does not happen now, God, universe, right? Whatever this applies to any of the listeners, right? For me, it's God. Right, you can apply it to whoever else. But when I got on my hands and my knees and I prayed and I said, like, I need to figure this out because if I don't, like, this is going to kill me. Like, that's literally where I was. There was no other options. Like, my cup was completely like, it was a desert at that point. And Heather, I can't really explain it other than like, I felt like I was beamed into the universe and I knew what I had to do. And when you talk about that script and that list, like, I knew that I had to completely like revamp my life and my health. And I just took a step back and I like examined my life. And I was like, okay, I eat like garbage. I am stressed out all the time. But if you would have told me, was I stressed? I would have told you flat out, not at all. So I
Right.
was in denial of a lot of things. And that almost sucker punched me to then help me realize, like, wait, like you are out of balance in every aspect of every part of your life. So if you actually think that something's going to happen, like get hit with reality. That was a really starting point from there. And then it was a bunch of experimentation. I'm sure that we can go into that right as we go.
Yeah, I know that for me it was a lot of the mirror work, the internal work, and
Mm-hmm.
really facing my true self and saying, taking a real look, honest look at how I was living, because I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was living healthy and the right way, but I had a lot of negative self-talk. So I know that your program taught me so much about that, and then the nutrition aspect,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and how all of it plays together. It's not just one thing.
No, it can be, and the challenge is right when we think about it from like our medical system, Like we really do have to take ourselves out of it and look at it from that outside in, because it's a treatment system. It's not a prevention system. So because it's a treatment system, all that you're going to do is come in and get treated. So you're just going to manage that thing. But that doesn't mean that you're actually going to improve your quality of life. And that's where I think that we kind of get these things like we're not really looking at it at the true lens of where it should be. Because if we think that we're going to get in there with some sort of solution, we're actually not getting the solution. We're just getting that quick Band-Aid, that quick fix. So then when I started to approach my own journey, I almost had to flip it and go backwards first. Because whenever we go to a doctor, wherever we try to get a treatment, we're going to the end. But we first have to understand, what are we even dealing with? Like, how jacked up are we, mentally? Because if our mental thoughts are all over the place, and if we have digestive symptoms, it doesn't matter how many supplements we take. Like I said this the other day, like we're going to just have very, very expensive urine at that point, right? Because you're not going to be able to absorb it. You're not going to be able to digest it. And then you're going to get yourself into the point where you've done now all of this, and now you're hit with this psychological, almost like torment, because now you're thinking you're doing everything right, but technically you did nothing right. And that's that back and forth battle that I think so many people with chronic illness, like we all know that story and we can all relate to it, but it's not front and center in the stories that evolve in our medical world.
It's hard and to break through those barriers because we're so conditioned to trust the white coat, and it's so hard. I even second guess putting some things out there because I'm like, people aren't going to believe that. And it starts with the mindset, and it's just, but it does. So much of it is mindset and gut health, and it is. So tell me more about how you came to come up with the program, and I want you to share with us all the good stuff coming up that you have for this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how everything really started, right, is if we're going to go and if we're going to commit to something, right? So it's a 9-module system. It's called the MENT protocol. MENT stands for migraine elimination through neuro-individual therapies. And the reason why we say neuro-individual is because, well, everybody who's listening to this who has, right, a migraine or any sort of migraine related symptom, everything has to be tailored to you personally. We all have a unique brain. We all have a unique body. We all have this crazy, unique combination of what makes you, you. And that's how our symptoms, that's how our triggers, that's how our treatment should really be. So it's a 9-step process, and first starts off with the mind. Then it goes into your migraine characteristics. Then it starts to go into your health conditions, mental and spiritual health, genetics and cellular health, and then it transitions into organs, nutrition, food, and lifestyle. So it's flipped really on its head throughout the whole part, because the first half of it is designed to understand, who are you? What are you dealing with? And what has this journey been? Because if you're going into this with failed treatment after failed treatment, a massive amounts of stigma, like that stuff has to be dealt with first. And once you get your goals, once you get your why down, once you start to understand, like, okay, I'm here, I'm going to do something, this is now for me. We then start to put the pieces together for your migraine, your symptoms, your triggers, your health conditions. Then we transition into that almost like revival, like I'm coming alive, right? I'm going to do this. And then that goes into the remaining parts of restoring you within.
I'll tell you, Anthony, preparing for this, I went back through my Instagram and my Facebook, and because I always tagged when I was in the program. I was in the pilot program, guys, and I was so hesitant on it. I don't know if you remember that conversation, Anthony, where I was
I remember it. I actually looked back on the notes before we had our call today. And I circled skepticism, like skeptical, huge
I was
letters.
So skeptical. Yeah. But I said, you know what? Where I am, I really thought I was at a plateau, that I could not go any further. Mm-hmm. I had already accepted that I'm going to have pain the rest of my life with migraines and these vestibular symptoms. It's just the way it is. So what am I going to lose? Finally, after talking to you, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to lose?
Yeah.
And I went in wholeheartedly, and so I went back through my Instagram posts, and I could see the pivot and the change, that mental change, and I was like, even just the brightness and the colors in my posts just were so much more brilliant, and I just felt like I was coming alive, and you could watch that through my posts, and it's amazing, the program. I wish it was out sooner, but I'm so blessed that you found me or we found each other back then.
Exactly.
So I think this is just the beginning of something great for you and the program. When does this launch? It's coming out soon,
So
right?
today's the 6th, 17 days. So when I first started this, and not many people know because I don't really share the pictures too much, but I have like boxes. And when I started, I had 7 6-inch binders. So I'm talking like 4,000 or 5,000 pages minimum of material, right? And then when you went through, I got a message the other day from this woman, Missy, and it was like a binder and a half, like a 1.5-inch binder, right? Now it's actually going to be digital, to where you get to interact with it. It now has timers. So then it comes in and it says, hey, let's take a break. Let's work on this. And we spent the last 2 years really building out the technology to create that personalization. Because the biggest thing that, again, that we realized is there's no one size fits all approach. And, going back to kind of your situation when you and I first met, I was skeptical getting into this, right? And I know that you were as well, rightfully so. So we had to get to a position of then, okay, how do we break down those walls? How do we get ourselves into a position of like trusting or figuring out or connecting those dots? And I'll never forget that one call when you then realized it was, okay, part of it's stress, part of it's self-talk, part of it's nutrition. And then you're like, wait, if it's those three, then so basically from the minute that I wake up, I'm already amped up, I'm already going. And I was like, yeah, welcome to exactly what I discovered. And then I remember that next call, you were like, I think I had a 50% reduction. Like I almost feel like I had nothing this entire week. And then that's where the maintenance parts comes in. And that was always a big challenge for not only myself, but I know it was for you in some of our later conversations that really we're trying to tackle with technology is that once you start to put those connections together, then now it's how do we hold your hand and then walk you through this maintenance? Because if you get some results, you just leveled up. But then once you level up, where does it go from there? What if you get a new symptom? What if you get a new trigger? What if you get a new stressor? Then how do you actually approach it and handle it? And that's why it's taken us a while to get this out, but it had to be so technology based.
Are there things that can be printed out to take to physicians? Do you have like something? Or, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're actually in the process of, which we're going to roll out towards the end of this year, if not beginning of next year, to where we're actually working within the EHR systems to where you can actually then send the notifications to your doctor's EHR. So all they have to do is look at it right then when you're in that appointment. Because the biggest challenge is that we've talked and we've interviewed so many different, right, doctors, neurologists, headache specialists. And what we always discovered was if you're going to give that printout, they've only have a minute, 90 seconds, right, to just scan. Like there's no way. There's no way they're going to be able to put those dots together. Even prior to, if you were to send something over to them, they just may be bombarded right prior to that appointment. And maybe they only give you 3 minutes most on that, right? Whereas it should be given 15, 20 minutes. So we're able to then really decipher and discern through the information that you provide through the technology. And then we can send that to the doctor's notes in bullet point fashion. So then where that they will have the exact precise things that you need to tell them about. And then we'll have right percentages and, different factors that allow the journey to kind of unfold from there. Because ideally speaking, if we can save, right, 20 to 50% of that doctor's appointment on recap and manual entry, who knows where that can go? Like, what if then they start to talk about lifestyle? What if they start to talk about triggers? What if they start to talk about how are you doing? Right. Like, I think that can just change, the entire landscape.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Such a great tool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So 17 days. So mark your calendars. Was it the 23rd?
23rd.
Yeah.
3/23. Yeah. So
And
we'll have a wait list going up, and we're able to then bring individuals on. They'll go through the first. So we're limiting, right, the amount of individuals in right now, just to make sure, right, we're able to give the best experience. Once we go through that, then we open it up globally. But yeah, so you'll be able to track recipes. It's a big digitalization of what you went through. So, right, there's a social group still. There's all of the content. We have videos. We have audios. And then a whole bunch of trackers, and then all of that then intertwines. Because I remember one of the things that you and I talked about was, okay, so what do you use? 10, 12 different apps right? To track food or to track sleep or to track this or to track, nothing talks.
Yeah.
It's like the medical system, right? So we're able to now bring all that together.
That's so, I'm so excited.
Thanks.
Excited for you
Thanks.
guys. And for all the people that are, really stuck right now and not seeing a way forward. That need this.
Yeah, I agree.
Even people that are like us that tend to fall back sometimes need to, restart something else, something new to get started. So that is exciting. So exciting.
Thank you. No,
Now,
thank you. Yeah, it's just about having something that can hold your hand through the journey, because the journey is not easy. It's wildly complicated. And the less stress that we can take off of you, then the better better present that you can be. And ideally speaking, right? If I mean, I remember you took pictures of some of the notes and the journal entries and stuff like that. But that's just so much manual work. And if you don't have to do that, or if you don't have to be so ingrained into that mentally, emotionally, like just think about how many like just nervous system pathways you can free up, right? Or then you're able to understand, like one of the best things I'm looking forward to is, so for me with what I understood from my vestibular symptoms and a lot of the things that were causing the inner ear pain, which then led to dizziness, which then led to just really the extreme vertigo, was a combination of multiple factors. And the biggest one was, right, anxiety and my mental health, also coupled with food and also nutritional deficiencies. So what I did not realize was the food that I was eating at certain periods of time, whether it be then coupled with like a barometric pressure shift, or then even, right, my anxious or my stress would come up, that would actually just create massive amounts of sinus pressure, which then would lead to fluid buildup into my left ear, which would then ultimately lead into the dizziness and then those vestibular symptoms. So I had no idea that then this cycle just continuously kept happening every about 5 to 7 days. So then there would just be periods of just the uncontrollable dizziness. And then that's where I was like, well, I have to have these vestibular migraines because no one's diagnosing me with this. There was no real connection back when I had them. And once I was able to put those pieces together, it's just like it started to just completely go away. And then you and I had this conversation not too long ago, but it's like then once we kind of connect these dots, we almost have to be reminded, like we kind of have to slip a little bit to just be almost like rebalanced. Because it's like, okay, if I start to do this, or if I go a little outside these parameters, okay, this is going to show up in ways that I don't like this anymore. And if I'm not aware of these signs or these symptoms or these triggers, then how far can this go and how fast? And that's where I think the biggest discovery is once you start to understand that about your body, everything changes. Literally everything.
And we all slip. It is a reminder.
We're human beings. We have to.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that I hear so much is, the quick fix. Everybody wants a quick fix. And as did I, but just the individually how unique our bodies are, and what works for me is not going to necessarily work for everybody else. And I think that's where your program really allows everyone to take an individual look and see what's going to work for us. Because I think in the social media realm, like Facebook and Instagram, even people always ask, "Well, you're doing so good. What is it that worked?" And it's not an easy question. It's a lot of work.
Yep.
And it's really, like you said, a journey to self-discovery and really learning about your body, and not necessarily, of course, what's going to work for me is not going to work for you. Yeah, you kind of pulled back off social media for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was kind of like one of those things where I wanted to see what the landscape was looking like. Because a lot of this too, like how you mentioned, was language, right? And if people are going to then ask, how did you do this, or how did this work, or right, everybody wants a quick fix. Like this is where we really have to open up the dialogue and have these conversations, because if we're talking about what a quick fix actually may look like I see posts all the time about individuals having to be on a 90-day cycle of certain medications before they can even see something. So they would consider that to be a quick fix. But then think about what could happen right on the other side. And when we talk about, right, what does this treatment journey look like? What does this self-discovery journey look like? all it really is just getting down to the core of who you are and what is going on. Now, that is just such a loaded question, right? Such a loaded answer. There can be so many things that go within that. And what I really mean by this is, like, who are you? Like, what has your journey been? Has your journey been filled with nothing but pain and sorrow and failed treatments? Like, do you hate yourself? Because when I started, number one, this was what I was telling myself, that nobody would ever love me, that I could never be a father, that I would pass migraines on to my kid because they're genetic, because that's how I had them, that I would never amount to anything really in the world. I was told by doctors to just give up. Right. So when you start to put that stuff on yourself, like, that's the starting point that we need to figure out. And then from there, it comes into is, okay, like, what do you have on a daily basis? Like, what symptoms are you experiencing? Like, what are these things that create your pain or create your persona? And then what have you been diagnosed with? What treatments are you taking? And all that is just to create this foundation. And once you do that, which can take a day, maybe 2 days, then that's where you start to put the pieces together. So if we're talking in comparison to some, right, these other treatments, and this is what I hope to do towards the end of this year, if not into next, is to actually do clinical trials that compare them both. Because ideally speaking, like, I'm not anti-medication. I'm not anti-doctor. I think doctors are magic makers, and I think medication is absolutely wonderful. But they all have to be done in conjunction with what works for you and what gets your brain and your nervous system to be aligned. And if those things aren't aligned, we're always going to have symptoms. We're always going to have triggers. So because nobody has really ever brought this to market in this type of way, whenever you were to go share it, or whenever I would go to share it, it's not really communicated right in the best. And that's why we had to pull back from social media. Also too, with, right, what we just went through as a society and as a world, right? You saw a lot of things kind of happening behind the scenes. So we just wanted to make sure that we were very crystal clear on what our message was, and then really get these messages of hope and opportunity to really show individuals, like, listen, this is not that crazy. Like, this is not all this work that everybody says it's going to be. Like, when we went back and got the results, I mean, what I'm going to be sharing in Puerto Rico in a couple of days to the American Psychosomatic Society, was the average individual who went through our program actually saw, like, dramatic results within 42 days. So if you compare that to what actually happens within a formal diagnosis in the migraine community, you're talking 42, 43 days to sometimes close to 1,200, 1,400 days. So I think that a lot of this is also just understanding what language and what stories are we telling ourselves. And then, are we willing to try something new? Because that's where I think the real big hesitation is. And you've mentioned this to me, and I've said this to myself many times, is sometimes we get very scared of then what life will be if we actually do become healthy.
Yes, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
I know. A couple of episodes back, I had a guest that we spoke about, imposter syndrome.
No, it's huge.
I know it is, and that's not necessarily. And the way we were discussing it is because we were healing, that we felt like imposters talking about the journey, because who's going to believe us that we actually healed or are healing, So it's an ongoing process. I mean, this mental game. And you said something about the journey with the medication. Medication, I took meds for a while, and I know you've had your
Absolutely.
own story. It doesn't necessarily have to be a long-term thing for medication. It can just be a temporary thing.
Yeah.
And it's everybody's so different. And what I love about your program is that there aren't any side effects except positive ones, of the outcomes. And if people choose to go that way or the medication route, they can both have positive outcomes. I think you just have to take a chance on yourself once in a while.
Well, when we talk about side effects, right, like discomfort, irritability is probably going to be one. The other challenge then is when you actually start to discover things in which may be a potential trigger, which then could lead right to a symptom, which then could lead to right nervous system exposure. So the example that I give, like right in the very beginning of all this, is it's kind of like a take on the book Atomic Habits, right? And how then you have the cue, the action, the reaction, and how that really works. And so then all of a sudden, if we write, I'm just going to look at this from the vestibular with me within mine, as I was discussing earlier. So whenever I would then all of a sudden start to see that barometric pressure shift, I would go to like Tylenol sinus, or I would go to like these things immediately. And then all of a sudden I started to realize, wait, 72 hours before this, because I'm eating grains and because I'm eating actually certain vegetables with grains, I found that combination out and that blew my mind. But with those particular combinations, I wasn't getting this massive sinus pressure. I was getting the imbalance within my ears. I was then starting to get those dizzy symptoms, and then also that just extreme vertigo. Wait, so you mean to tell me that 72 hours prior to this happening, if I then feel this cue or feel this all of a sudden thing come up inside of my body, I can't go for this, I can't go for what I normally do. I now have to try something else. And that, I think, is the biggest side effect of that discomfort right in the very beginning, because then it's like you have to face that. You're not going to have to change your habits. You're going to have to change your lifestyle. You're going to have to make change. Change is very hard for most people. The biggest thing that we got and the takeaway from everybody who went through, the thing that they said that was their most painful was the fear of the unknown. Because then what if they did something, or what if they tried a lifestyle and then it got worse, or maybe it didn't work? Right. Because we've been conditioned, as you said, to go down this treatment path, we always go for these things kind of first. So even if we may get a side effect, we may get something, we're okay with that, but we're not okay with the other part. That's really what comes up in all of this, is confronting those belief systems, lifestyle, habit changes, etc., and then making them work for you in particular. So if I then changed my diet, if I then started to have more water, if I then started to rebalance my electrolytes, if I then, did these certain things, that meant now I'm not getting this reaction within my body. That actually meant that the dizziness did not exist anymore. And then, so you mean to tell me that, so that's where I think the biggest challenge is for most people with this, is going into, because I know it was for me. I know you and I have talked about it, and it just seemed to be consistent. And I think the other big part in all of this too is, as then we're talking about medication, right? If somebody had their thyroid removed, right? Like, you can't get somebody off of that type of medication. Right? If somebody's on, Xanax or something, you just can't get them off of that immediately. Right. If you then also, let's say, right, for most people who may have had a very big, toxic load, right? The toxins may be really big. The big challenge is actually understanding that some of those symptoms of detoxification or healing are actually the exact same migraine symptoms. So that's also a very hard pill to swallow, because sometimes it's like, wait, am I actually doing what's right? Or am I triggering a migraine? So if your hand is not being held through this, you're just going to fall right back into old traps, old patterns, old habits. I just really wanted to create the program and the system and the processes and truthfully the technology that I never had and that you didn't have, right? Because throughout this whole process, I've remained in contact with you and saw how you've done, because you were actually an inspiration to me going into this because of your career, which then you had to go through. So it was like, if I'm able to work and help you, you're now able to improve your quality of life. You're actually now able to, in turn, right, give more benefits or more insights to your daughter, to your husband, to your family at large. Like, that's a powerful ripple effect that just doesn't start with me and it just doesn't go into you. Like, that just continues onwards, and that can be a generational thing. And I just remember how it was with my parents, with me, just seeing me all the time in so much pain. Like, it really broke our family dynamic. And if you're able to improve your quality of life, even 10%, even 20%, that's going to make a big impact. And that's all that matters.
So, well, on a personal level, I mean, one of the questions I get asked a lot is how, when you were in the storm of the migraines, the vestibular migraines, how did that affect your family and friends? And it's one of the top questions I get asked.
It's almost like, let me pull on how much time do we have, right?
Right.
For me, and I'm glad that you asked that question, because it's actually one of the topics I did want to talk to you about when I found a journal article. So I'll get into that in just a second. But I mean, it got so bad to where I had to quit sports. I almost didn't graduate high school. There was a huge period of time in which, I mean, I had countless friends just flat out tell me like, are you ditching me? Or are you trying to even be friends with me? I hit a really tough period so was it junior year of high school into senior year when you have to take the ACTs, SATs, all that. And that was when I was in a whole lot of pain because I just got meningitis the year prior. So I think scored like a 16 or something. So, I mean, goodbye college prospects, right? So I barely graduated high school. I've got no college prospects. I'm getting bombarded, right, by the system and society at large to tell me to go to college because if you don't, right, you're really going to turn into nobody. So at that point, like music was a huge thing for me. And I ended up finding a passion for DJing and electronic music. So that really saved my life in a lot of ways. And then out of the blue, 5.5 years after that, so I'm 23 at the time, and I could not stand any loud music or any loud lights or bright lights anymore. So I just felt like every single point in time with my migraines or my symptoms that the rug was pulled out from under me, and then I had to recreate myself, and then rug pulled out, recreate, rug pulled out, recreate. And that's where I was saying in the beginning, like, I feel like this is such a huge spiritual battle. Like, because I think a person can only take so much of that before it's like you just lower the bar so low of like what it is because you just have to get by. So it messed with my personal like friendship dynamics. It messed with my family a lot. Yeah, there was just a whole lot of period in time like where my parents were just always bouncing around from like doctor's appointments, and then I would always hear them like yelling, going back and forth. I mean, I'd even be questioned by them like, "There's no way that you're in this much pain." And then the big aha moment actually happened, and this is what started the MEN protocol. So my dad went with me to the Mayo Clinic and drove me down because I couldn't fly at the time. So yeah, he drove me down to the Mayo Clinic. We got to ride together, and he saw all this kind of happening. Then he saw the journey unfold, and he saw me become free. Then fast forward 3 years after that, so this is now 2014, and he's in a freak car accident to where he was working for an electrical contractor, and a piece flew through the back window and hit him right, almost had the spinal cord. Like doctors are saying if it was like a couple centimeters over, would have hit him right in the brainstem, he would have died immediately. So it hit him at a point to where he was in like, he had so much adrenaline, right? And so much just activity and, you know, everything going within his body. He went to the job site, finished it, came home, came back to work. And then all of a sudden it just hit him like a ton of bricks. Like, then he started getting migraine symptoms, patterns, everything. So now he's saying what I went through.
Right.
And then he was telling me, I mean, he was sharing journal articles with me, like his journals. He was sharing his insights to all of it. And I'll never forget, like, I watched a man just get completely broken down. And sometimes we don't see that, right, while we're in this journey. But I think that that's what happens from the outside, right? It's everyone looking at us is we're just this almost broken down person. So he was one of the very first people outside of me to go through MENT, and 64 days reversed all of his symptoms, and now he's been 9 years free.
Made me cry. Wow.
Yeah. So he was like one of the biggest supporters going in, and he said that he's like, I can't believe that this is what you went through, and now I got to share that. So the reason why I want to say this is because you asked about like how is family, the dynamics. So I got to then take something of really negativity and turn it into something very positive for my family and others. And that's why I was saying that too, because I see that picture of your beautiful daughter in the back. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, that the family and friends thing changes, but it's, I just think that there's a lot of anger out there towards family and friends when they don't understand. But I think I think people come into your life for seasons, and it's just, you just have to accept that and move on and realize, pour into those people that have still you. And sometimes, like your father, they come around for one reason or another. Hopefully it's not for the reason your father went through, but and sometimes they pop back into your life with those reasons. It's a tough one.
It absolutely is, and that's where I think it comes back down to language as well, because like the feelings of misunderstood and the stigma, right? The guilt, the shame, like we all go through that because I think it's a natural response within the chronic illness. Like it's almost something that has to happen because all you want to do is become healthy. All you want to do is find an answer. And right, if somebody treats you a certain way, it's like you have to almost take it as a personal attack, right? But there's so much more into that. There's so much more that has to be really uncovered in order to understand like what that's doing to you and your nervous system. Because ideally speaking, like your nervous system is it's the operating system of your body. It's the controlling hardware. And I just almost look at all of those external things coming in as viruses, mind viruses, whatever you want to call them. But then they also start to reveal ways in which you process certain things. So if you're always feeling to be misunderstood, well, what does that mean? Where is it coming from? How can you reframe it? Can you find support in other places? Can you find seasonal individuals that can be along with the journey with you? Because then if you're just surrounded by that like-minded community, that's where I think really magic happens, is because then you just are almost having this complete tunnel vision of, wait, so you did this, oh, I did this, and now we're actually collaborating instead of, because I don't know, man, some of these social groups, like it's so toxic. You go in there and I watched one woman get just absolutely belittled for sharing a supplement that she was using, and it ended up working for her. And it actually was a pretty clean one. Like I was really surprised to see it. Mm-hmm. And there was like 60, 70 comments, and they're just like straight up talking down to this person, belittling them. And like, we need more love. We need more self-love, as you said in the beginning.
Such an awful thing for us to go through, and then to lean in a community, be in a social group where people are supposed to be experiencing the same things, and there's just so much ugliness in that and darkness. And I still scroll through to see if there's an occasional person that I might be able to help, but it's hard because you don't want to get sucked back in, because it is just the negativity, and just really have to pull back once in a while and take a break. I know a lot of people. I've met most of my vestibular family through social media, so there are good outlets, but there's you just have to be careful. If you start having a physical reaction to something you're reading, back off. Get out of there.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because I feel like that can apply to almost so many things right on this journey. Is all of a sudden, if you're into something, then you get some sort of symptom, physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, whatever it may be. Something is happening within you, and that's what needs to be read. And if we just continue to be immersed into it, like, who knows how far it goes.
That was part 1 in a 2-part series with Anthony. He has come such a long way, and as I went back through this conversation, I had to revisit my notes from when I was in the program. Growth does continue after you're finished with the program. I'm excited to share more about his journey of health, healing, and head health Mint protocol in our next episode. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it. If you would like to reach out to Anthony, please find the links to Instagram, Facebook, or the Head Health website below. If the episode resonated with you, consider passing it along to someone that may need to hear it. Also, be sure to reach out on social media, tag us. I love meeting and hearing from Meniere's Muse listeners. For more information on the Vestibular Disorders Association, please visit the VITA website at www.vestibular.org. Remember to love yourself, trust the work, lean on this beautiful community, and lastly, believe healing is possible. See you next week, warriors.